Kelly Weaver reporting for Infowars.com. We are here at the Freedom Force International Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm here with Lord Christopher Monckton, who has some breaking news in the development of the climate change lie. Can you give us some of that information?
Yes, certainly. I've been here to give the keynote valedictorian speech at this third Freedom Force International Conference, and the subject of the conference this year was climate change. And I was able to announce, indeed, what you call breaking news. It's exactly what it is, that I and my team of very distinguished professors and doctors of science have discovered a major, significant, substantial error in the way in which the computer models calculate how much warming they would predict should be happening. Take that error away, and there is no longer any climate problem. You might get 1 or 2 Celsius of warming per doubling of CO2 concentration, but you won't get much more than that. All the suggestions that we're facing some tipping point and suddenly we might see 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 13 Celsius of warming per doubling of CO2, the kind of dramatic figures that have been appearing in some scientific papers, we can now prove that all of those very high-end forecasts of how much warming we might get are based on an error of mathematics, correct for the error, and we're back down to a maximum of 2, perhaps 2.5 Celsius of warming per doubling of CO2. I have been looking for this error in the mathematics for 10 years. I have known it was there, but I didn't know what the error was. I just knew they'd made a mistake, and I knew this because I'm a classical mathematician. In roughly 340 BC, Menaichmus of Alopekonissos in Asia Minor, now Turkey, studied a particular one of these curves. It was the hyperbola, in particular a special kind of that hyperbola called a rectangular hyperbola. And he took the intersection of that with a parabola to establish the solution to the longest standing problem in early mathematics of the classical world, which curiously pops up in the determination of the temperature response to temperature feedbacks in the climate. The same curve appears, as it does in all feedback mathematics. Feedback mathematics originally came from electronic circuitry. That's where they were able to work out very precisely how the equations worked. What the mistake was that the climate scientists had made. They had borrowed the mathematics of feedbacks from electronic circuits, and that was an appropriate thing to do. It's perfectly correct to do that, but they had misunderstood it, and they'd made a mistake on the way, and it was that mistake that I, at last, after 10 years of looking, found. And just a few weeks ago, an electronic engineer got in touch and he said, well, you may like to read this particular textbook because they have made mistakes, though he said, I, like you, can't find out what the big one is. So as soon as I read the textbook, and because I had this knowledge of this curve, I knew at once what they'd done wrong. That's the nature of the error. It's that they're doing the calculations at the wrong end of the curve and getting very silly, exaggerated results because of that. At this conference, other errors were also put forward. Professor William Happer, for instance, who's perhaps the most distinguished physicist still practicing today. He's the Cyrus Fogg Brackett Professor of Physics at Princeton, who doesn't believe a word of the global warming nonsense. He has discovered that the central estimate of global warming has been exaggerated by 40%. Combine his result with mine, and 2 Celsius is more than the warming you would be likely to get per doubling of CO2, and that would take about 150 years to come through in any event. So I can now officially declare breaking news on Infowars.com on behalf of Alex Jones, who's become a very good friend over the years, that the climate scare is over.
Do you expect the mainstream media, and do you expect to be attacked now for basically revealing the truth that their hoax is up?
The first thing I have to do now is to try to get the paper in which we have enshrined this result published in a learned journal. It is at the moment out for review at a very major journal of a National Academy of Sciences, somewhere in the world. I can't be too specific at this stage, obviously. And this journal, which we've published in before, is very thorough in its method of review. It'll send the paper out to at least 3 reviewers, and I would expect in this case we might even get half a dozen reviewers.
When do you expect, like, what exact date will this scientific review be published?
Very difficult to say, because as this is an explosive result, it may well be many months before we hear back from them, because they will be absolutely determined not to accept this unless it is right. And if at the end of that time the paper is duly published, and if in the months following that the international scientific community finds no significant error in the approach we have taken and the result we have obtained, then that's it. Bye-bye to the climate scare.